Strangely enough, I've the past few days I've lost my voice, so it's been really difficult to do any recordings. And I've had a few people ask me, is there anything wrong? I don't look well. I don't sound good. I look tired. And what's the thinking of what I'm doing in life? And I think all of that answers itself, and I really appreciate people's concern. You know, these YouTube recordings, it's just purely sort of archaeology, history, heritage. And this year has made me realize more than anything that, I've been involved in archaeology for such a long time, and you've just got to step back. And people have said, "Oh, are you finishing with archaeology altogether?" Well, I've got lots of archaeological reports to publish. I've got lots of books I need to get out there. I don't need to do the teaching anymore. I kept Archaeology Cymru going because I thought I was being very benevolent in giving somebody an opportunity to work for Archaeology Cymru, which went really badly wrong. So I just thought that, it was time that I reassessed everything and started to think that, I've got to think sometimes about myself, and I've got children and the real passions that I want to do, the acting and so on. So that basically answers a lot of things, really, and appreciate that I've got some friends out there who are actually concerned, and I really appreciate that. So today I'd like to make this a very short recording, a very, very short thing out there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and don't forget to press the join button down below, the blue join button. £1.99 a month. It pays some of my bills, which is great. I do make a little bit from YouTube, not a lot, but everything helps. One thing, if anyone is out there that wants to help promote my sort of my acting side of things and sort of get my name out there and sort of help share, help like, sort of get stuff out there, because it's that passion. I know I want to. The thing is, with acting, and you get a good role, you can then use that money and time to sort of publish the archaeological report stuff that I've been meaning to do for years. So everything's sort of linked. I wanted to talk about a chap by the name of Stephen Clarke. And there's a really interesting story about this man. It starts when I'm about 10 years old, and I go on a canoeing trip to Simmons Yacht, and it's like a weekend thing, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And on the I think it's on the Sunday, my grandparents turn up and they say, we've met an archaeologist in Monmouth called Stephen Clarke. And my grandparents, Phyllis and Noah, and so if I'm about 10 then, this is 37 years ago. And this guy, Stephen Clarke, had a whole shop that he was excavating on Mono Street in Monmouth in the middle. As you go over the bridge, up there on the right-hand side, there was this shop and he was excavating it. There was somebody who had given up their business and basically said, look, rip up the floor, do whatever you like. And that's so they excavated and they found the remains of a Roman era fort. They found the remains of pre-Roman stuff in Monmouth and evidence of medieval shops and cesspits and ditches and all this type of stuff. Anyway, my grandparents said, here's Stephen Clarke's number, give him a phone call. So I did, I think. Anyway, there's this guy always in the background, Stephen Clarke, and I'll give you a little bit of a background. He was very anti-Glamorgan and Gwent Archaeological Trust. In fact, he was the archaeologist who was excavating in Monmouth when the Glamorgan and Gwent Archaeological Trust didn't give a damn. They had backhanders, left archaeological projects without doing the work properly. They were as corrupt and bent as anything, the Glamorgan and Gwent Archaeological Trust. In the this is going to be the late 1980s, early 1990s, tie-ins with my other video about the Glamorgan and Gwent Archaeological Trust. So when I got to roughly about the age of 18, 19, I used to go up to Monmouth and I met Stephen a few times, and I had a volunteer that was working on one of my own excavations near Cowbridge, Hollybush Farm, and she was called Vicky Edwards, and she eventually did some stuff on Time Team and a big dig in London or whatever. Anyway, I introduced her to Stephen. She did some work on the excavations. And I remember going around with Stephen, and he was often in current archaeology, and he ended up getting an MBE from the Queen. Yes, an MBE from the Queen for his services to archaeology. Stephen Clarke, love him to bits. He also became a member of the Institute of Field Archaeology, and he was one of those that sort of got me in as an associate of the Institute of Field Archaeology. He was one of those who signed me in back in about 2004, 5, or whenever I did that. There's a video about that. And Stephen was a true campaigner. What he was saying was that the Glamorgan and Gwent Archaeological Trust really didn't care about the archaeology in Monmouth, and they didn't. And they would always sort of work against what Stephen was doing. But Stephen met MBE in archaeology from the Queen. A member of the Institute of Field Archaeology was basically up there saying, we've got to see Monmouth archaeology as being important, and that's what he did. And he also supported another dear friend of mine, Stuart Wilson, with his work at Trellick in 2006. Stuart Wilson bought Trellick, and Stephen Clarke was one of the great supporters of Stuart Wilson when Raymond Howells was very anti Stuart Wilson, and Stephen Clarke really backed him up. There's a little story about Stephen Clarke as well. The year was, I always get this wrong, I think it was roughly around 2004. The Time Team were looking for people to work on the programme. Anyway, I applied. I didn't get anywhere. They kept my name on record. So the following August, they were organising, or July or June or something, I can't remember. They needed people for something called the Big Dig. And I had a phone call from somebody called Simon Rakes. I had no idea that he was taken over as producer for Time Team. Name didn't ring a bell. This guy on the other end of the phone, he said, Are you Karl-James Langford? And I said, yes. And he said, we've heard about your enthusiasm with archaeology. Do you want to be on Time Team? I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a wind-up. And I thought, it's a joke. So I said, oh, no, thank you. Not interested. what? Of course I was bloody interested, but I thought it was a joke. This name, Simon Rakes, didn't ring a bell. Didn't ring a bell at all. Obviously, director Tim Taylor, isn't it? Simon taken over, producer or directing or whatever, he was there. Anyway, I said, why don't you try Stephen Clarke as a joke? So I gave him Stephen Clarke's number. One of the biggest mistakes I made in my life, turning down Simon Rakes. I thought it was a wind-up. I used to get lots of wind-ups there to do with metal detecting and all sorts of things, jokes on the phone. 2 weeks later, Simon phoned me. He said, "Hiya, Karl. Shame we couldn't use you." And I actually had the Time Team magazine, and I looked through it, and Simon Rakes, his name was there. And Simon said, "We can't use sorry we can't use you. Sorry we couldn't use you, but because you didn't want to do it. Oh, we've decided to use Stephen Clarke. It was too late." Stephen Clarke was on there. And Stephen Clarke was their medieval pottery expert on Time Team. But Stephen was on Time Team, and I couldn't have asked for a better person to be on Time Team. Love Stephen Clarke to bits, and if it was my moment of glory past and gone forever, I'm so pleased that they got Stephen to do it. I'm so pleased that Simon phoned Stephen and got him on the programme. And Stephen Clarke was on a few episodes. I think he did they had a castle site that they were doing, a really big castle site, can't remember, near us. Anyway, so they did that one, and he was on a few other episodes. Stephen Clarke, massive campaigner in archaeology, and he was a printer initially, and his son Rodri is now running the print workshop and St James's Square in Monmouth. And COVID hit him, Stephen, in a sense that he couldn't work through COVID because he was an archaeologist who couldn't work. It affected his mind. And unfortunately, Stephen isn't very well these days, and he couldn't keep active. When you've got a very active mind, you've got to keep it active. My granddad stopped when he was working at 93. He lasted 6 months, passed away at 94 because he'd always been active. Stephen Clarke has always been active. He never wanted to retire, and COVID hit him for 6. And love Stephen Clarke to bits. Love goes out to his family, and I hope Stephen Clarke can find some of his old magic. And I will keep my mind in archaeology, writing reports and stuff. I will still keep doing my online lecture on a Tuesday, at least once a week for the next whatever years. I'm still doing Thursday evening as well. So join me Thursday evening. I've usually got it on live. 7:30 on a Tuesday and 7 o'clock on a Thursday. Gotta go, my voice is gone. Keep supporting me. Keep watching my stuff. Help me to get further with what I need to do. Subscribe, like, and press the join button. Every contribution. Anyone wants to help me promote, just get in there. Just help me out. And lots of these videos that I've been doing recently are thanks to Ross Broadstock. And it's again keeping the word out there for Ross as well. Anyway, love goes out to Ross's family and you, Ross. If you're up there watching, chucking bloody lightning rods at me for mentioning a Romans bollocks to you, Ross. Love you to bits. Life is a lot less with you gone. And Stephen Clarke, you and your family and Rodri, thanks, my friend. And thank you all for watching. Keep supporting me. Any help you can give, love it. Thank you.